Hey guys, Peace Blaster here. I had to do a video about this as soon as I saw the news. It appears that Valve has not been idle for the past few years like I thought they were. I'd kind of developed this sort of cynical perspective on Valve that they had just been coasting on Steam sales and not really feeling the need to develop any big titles, but oh man, was I wrong. Now, I should also preface this with I am a big Linux fan. I've been waiting a very long time for something like this to come along. I don't think I can. I don't think I can not just blurt it out at this point. Steam hired a bunch of wine developers and is now looking at a very wide variety of would-be Windows-only games that will now be available on Steam. Now, I should say, credit where credit's due, Steam on Linux was around in, I think, 2011, 2012. A lot of people got it that were Linux users just to be like, ooh, this is going to really be a thing. And a lot of the titles didn't run particularly well, and it was extremely limited in what you could run. We were looking at mostly 2D indie games, and then Valve put a few of their titles on there, but the OpenGL versions of them just really didn't run as well. But all that is about to change. Now, let's also not jump the gun, because we haven't really seen what realistic performance looks like yet. And getting down to the dirty details, what's really going on is everybody could have been running games with Wine on Linux all this time, but if you've ever tried it, it's rather tedious and it doesn't tend to perform super well even if you do get it working. And there's all kinds of settings and customizations you have to worry about for it, and it just generally was a hassle that wasn't worth it. But now that we have a real mainstream game, well, I don't want to say developer necessarily, but gaming platform, I guess, behind it, and more importantly, their money behind it, I think we could start seeing some real Linux gaming taking off in the next few months. And that's very exciting. But I guess for those of you unfamiliar with the whole Linux versus Mac versus Windows war, for lack of a better word, let me give some context here. I'm not going to give a huge history lesson, but basically a lot of people think it's just Windows versus Mac. Mac, or OS X, is a very nice operating system. It's very well made. Unfortunately, Apple is super protective of it, and it will only run on Apple devices officially. You can finagle it into working on something else, but it's very difficult and generally not worth it. And then Windows absolutely dominates most user end computers. Servers are a different story. And then there's this kind of dark horse called Linux, which is free and open source. And free and open source, I could do a whole video just about what that means, but for a pragmatist, what that really means is it's free. And it works pretty well at this point. It used to be kind of a buggy nightmare. It still can be, depending on what you're trying to pull off. But Linux has gotten pretty stable as of late. And so let's count the practical details this leads to. Okay, number one, if you're building a budget gaming rig, you can take $100 off the price right now if this works out, because you no longer need a copy of Windows. Number two, Now, I'm not going to jump the gun and say that Windows is going to die as a platform, but PC gaming is rather critical to their hold on the market as of right now, because Linux and Mac both generally don't have the kind of game support that Windows does, and most developers for PC games make things with Windows in mind. And this means that not only is Linux going to grow as a platform in popularity due to this, but even if developers do make a game for Windows, you no longer need Windows to play it. And so that's exciting. And number 3 is Microsoft declining in popularity due to this, which, again, I don't think they'll die, but I think that this is going to hurt pretty bad. Windows declining there means we might see a lot of other developers get on the Linux bandwagon finally. So we might start seeing things like DirectX run on Linux, Vulkan run on Linux, and a lot of these game engines and libraries that were normally Windows only start to show up on Linux. And that would mean that eventually we just have games that just run on Linux straight up. And again, I don't mean like indie titles that are doing it for funsies. I mean like AAA, like Call of Duty type titles will be running natively on Linux. And that is just super exciting. A lot of middlemen getting cut out. End users are saving a ton of money. It's just gonna be great. So that's about all I have to say about it as of right now. I will try it with a few titles once I find out more details. I just wanted to, like, shout from the rooftops, Linux will overtake Windows. So that's about it. See ya.